Welcome to this series of programmes. Where next for Central and Eastern Europe? The challenges for business and government to 2020. My name is Daniel Thornley, Senior Vice President of the Economist Group in Vienna, and I'm very pleased to be interviewing today my friend Alfonso Dejani, Senior Vice President of Eastern Europe CS Oracle, and welcome to the programme today, Alfonso.
Hi, Danny.
The EU is a tremendous positive driver for developments in East Central Europe. It's improving growth, real wages, consumption, and it's also helping improving the tax environment, the legal environment and corporate governance. So we see many positive inputs from the EU, which is good for this region. However, when we're comparing some of the developments in Central Europe with what's gone on before in Western Europe, for example, if we consider the Lisbon Agenda, where so much was intended for IT and R&D, sadly today the western parts of the EU are spending 3 times more on subsidising cows than they are doing on spending on R&D, IT and university education combined. So clearly very disappointing. And also on the downside, we have the fact that several of the South Mediterranean countries of the EU, when they were joining, were quite remiss and inefficient in taking up the EU funds. So it would be interesting to compare that with Central Europe. But on the plus side, Oracle and other companies are already saying that they're seeing some tangible positive benefits from the EU funding. So as that background, Alfonso, how does Oracle see the impact of the EU funding on the region?
Well, Danny, we have a good news. The good news is the money is there. So the EU now is planning to spend 180 billion euro for the EU 10+2 from, I think, 2007 to 2013. So the money is there. So the question is not where is the money I cannot invest. The question is how do I deploy this money rapidly and in the right sector, which comes to the country plans and the country agency. Most of the countries, you know, have the agency. They created an agency to manage these funding. By the way, they use, some of them use Oracle as application and technology to help them do that, because you need to report back to Brussels on where you spend the money and so on and so forth. So everything has to be transparent, of course. So this is an important thing. So I believe that the money is there, the systems are there, and the good, and as you said, some bad experience are also there from the past that can help these countries to make the right choices. And you know, we can bring, the private sector can bring a lot of example, a lot of good example from Western Europe, whether it's Ireland or Spain, what they did in terms of managing these funds, with which kind of application, and bring them back to these countries so that they can have an advantage and don't make the same mistakes. By the way, some of them have done a great job. Poland, again, through their agricultural agency, they deployed most of the funds. Some a little less. Bulgaria, Romania had difficulties in absorbing the previous funds that were available to them. So I think the critical piece is planning in advance, is having appropriate strategy in place. For example, do not forget the mid-market.
And following on from that, what do you think governments need to do to attract foreign direct investment into their countries?
I think they need to invest in infrastructure, number one, whether it's you know, the telecom infrastructure or the roads, airports, and that's clear, because an investor will not go in country where that doesn't exist or is very poor. The second one is simplification of creating a company. If you're an investor, you want to make sure that happens in a matter of days and not months. And the third one is to promote innovation. Low cost is not going to be always the advantage. There will be a place on earth where there is a lower cost labor. So innovation and entrepreneurship are a critical element where there needs to be an investment. If you look at some of the data, for example, which is surprising for a region that in the past was very technology savvy, is, you know, look at Slovakia, the patent creation, 8 new patents in 2006, 880 in Finland, same population. So there is a way to go, and what we recommend is that given the EU funds, that a chunk of it, an important chunk of it, Romania spent 15%, is spent on IT, is spent on new innovative idea, is spent in helping local companies, mid-market companies, to become more competitive using advanced and new technology.
You mentioned there, Alfonso, 15% for Romania. I'm just interested, what would you consider a reasonable ballpark figure for the proportion of IT spending that should be included in the total EU funding for the region? Would something like 15 to 25% be reasonable in your opinion?
20%, I think, will be great. It'll be a good number. Again, every EU project fund we've seen has somehow a technology component, or most of them. And what we have seen in the project we've been involved is that 20% of the total project fund was spent on IT, and those were successful projects because, again, innovation comes from technology often.
We've mentioned, Alfonso, absorption once or twice. I'm just wondering how you see it for the region, how the take-up of EU funding, the absorption has been. Would you rate East Central Europe absorption of funds as good, medium or poor?
I would say it's doing as a whole medium, and the reason is that they've really been proactive in setting up agencies that were really focused on managing these funds, and that was done upfront. And also I think there was a lot of government awareness that this was one of the major political reasons for joining the EU at the time, and so they had to somehow show the results. So there was more emphasis, more focus on that. So I would say medium, and again, it goes good examples such as Poland to less good example in other places.
Thank you very much, Alfonso, for your thoughts on EU funding.
Thank you, Danny.